round of golf, we're going to have small shots that we play around the green, and then long shots that we're going to be playing off the tee. What we want to have is a way of practicing both, developing the skills that are going to allow us to hit comfortably with feel and touch the short shots that are going to have the ball be able to get into the hole in the fewest number of strokes, and at the same time develop a feel for how those small shots can help us build the feeling of our full swing. I like to use the practice of layering the motion of our swing, adding layers of motion that add distance to the flight of the golf ball. This technique in our short game is going to be very effective in helping you understand what to feel when you have a shot from 15 feet from the hole versus one that may be 30 feet from the hole. I look forward to sharing this with you, so why don't we go ahead and take a look at the practice of layering the motion of your swing. The practice of developing the layers of motion in our golf swing are going to be done progressively, meaning we're going to start with the least amount of motion and energy, layer 1, and maximum amount of motion, layer 5. In layer 1, we're not going to need dynamic movements in our hands or a dynamic movement in our posture. We just need our hands and our posture to support a simple motion. And so in layer 1, we don't have to get down into a dynamic posture and hold the club with our dynamic grip. We can stand up taller. We can hold the club lighter. We can let the arms hang more naturally. In this layer, we're going to have your right leg, the instep of the right foot, be a simple pivot motion for your body. We're not going to have any weight shifting motion, just a simple pivot. Our arms are going to hang down so that when our body begins to pivot, our arms begin to swing. The club will have a slight arc to its motion, not straight back and forth, or not much rotational movement in the swing. When I maintain this simple pivot of my body here, with the arms swinging and hanging, not activating my hands, the maximum distance that I can hit this shot is only about 4 yards of carry and maybe 3 yards of roll. There wasn't anything about what I set up that made me feel like I was going to create a dynamic action. I let the club do the work for me in this first layer, and I want to feel like the simplicity of the setup is matching up to the simplicity of the shot. Now let's take a look at layer 2. In layer 2, we're going to have a progression of our motion of our body. And to help add some motion to our body, instead of having our feet together with a single pivot point here, we're going to widen out our stance slightly. We're still going to have our stance have a little bit of an open feeling to it. That's going to promote a more natural rotation into our follow-through. So by placing our feet a little further apart and opening up our stance to the target slightly, we now add the layer of motion of our body, adding a little bit more energy because of that body motion, and then allowing it the space to follow through into a position where I'm on the left leg, balanced off of the toe of the right. My hands and my arms are still going to maintain their relaxed state where they're not in a dynamic motion or connection. They're going to be in a very quiet position. I'm only looking to add a layer of 4 or 5 more yards of distance to this shot. And so I'll connect to layer 1, feeling. I'll then separate my stance. And now adding a little bit of motion with my body is going to add a layer of 4 or 5 more yards to that shot. That gives me one more shot that I can play around the green to get the ball up and down and into the hole. What you'll learn as you're developing a feel for the layering of this swing is the underlying motion, the pacing of the golf club. The rhythm that the golf club is swinging is not going to change as you add the progression of each layer. This is going to not only help us perform these shots in a nice rhythmic way, allowing the club to do the work for us, but it's also helping you internalize that rhythm for the full range of motion of your golf swing. Layer 3 is going to bring a little bit more dynamic feeling in our hands. So our hands are going to have their normal grip that give access to their normal range of motion. A little bit of hinge with a little bit of pivot in the release. And so once again, I'm going to start with layer 1 feeling, single pivot. I'm going to then separate my feet and remember the feeling of layer 2 motion in my body. And now layer 3 has a little bit of motion in my hands that added a little bit more motion and energy in the club. I'm going to stay connected to the layer 1 and 2 motion for balance and rhythm and flow. And so now once again I have another 4 or 5 more yards of distance, feeling a connection to the first 2 layers, and adding that third layer is giving me a more dynamic motion. What you'll discover is you're going to play a lot of your short game shots in that layer 3 motion. So now let's take a look at layer 4. Layer 4 is going to add on top of layer 3. Layer 3 brought us into this position. Layer 4 is going to reconnect us to using our arms and our body in their range of motion. My arms and my body will travel a little bit further. Not a lot further. They're not trying to create more tension or more speed. They're just trying to feel a little bit more range of motion on the backswing and then stay connected as one unit as we change direction on their follow through. I'm not going to use my hands anymore in layer 4 motion. The layer 3 just got our hands creating that range of motion. Layer 4 is body and arms, and now our hands can flow on through the golf ball. Once again, only adding another 4 or 5 yards to the shot. So I have layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, and now layer 4. Adding rhythm and balance and flow, letting the club do the work for me, having the ball fly a little bit further, flying a little bit higher, landing a little bit softer. The final layer and final level of motion in our golf swing is going to be our follow through. Once again, we want to feel the progression of our motion building from layer 1, the most simple, layer 2, little body motion, layer 3, added our hands, layer 4, a little bit more range of motion in our backswing, layer 5 is a more natural full release of our follow through. So now, in a sense, we're hitting another shot in our short game that's going to hit the ball a little bit further and a little bit higher, but we are now developing a feel for the full range of motion in your golf swing. So once again, the practice is to connect to layer 1, imagine the feeling of the motion, set up layer 2, imagine the feeling of the motion, rehearse layer 3 and layer 4, and then allow the follow through to continue on to its natural flowing motion. So there's the practice of layering the movements of your swing, accessing different levels of energy without trying to create more speed in your motion of your swing. This is going to help you tremendously as you build more feel for the full range of motion of your swing that you'll use when you're swinging a driver off the tee.